From the tea set of Beauty and the Beast found in Tarzan, to Mulan, who appears in a poster stuck to Nani's wall in Lilo and Stitch, here are 10 characters hidden in animated films. You may have already watched the animated film Moana, The Legend of the End of the World, produced by Disney and released in 2016. If you haven't, you should know that this feature film, which was a smash hit when it was released, was inspired by Polynesian oral tradition. The curious and discreet detail that we highlight consists of a tattoo drawn on the skin of the character Maui, played by the famous Dwayne Johnson. In the story, this character with an imposing stature is a demigod isolated on an island. He has the peculiarity of having his body covered with tattoos, and each of these figures drawn on his skin represent a heroic feat, an enemy defeated. He also has the power to change into the animal of his choice, thanks to a magic hook. But after a battle, Maui lost this precious object, and Tomatoa, a giant crab, took it. This evil crustacean lives in a dark kingdom, and Maui will later fight and defeat him. But even before this victorious fight, we can see the tattoo of the monstrous crab on Maui's skin, during the scene where he greets the heroine Moana by singing. A few moments later, the tattoo acquires its meaning. The demigod reveals to the young woman that he is preparing to fight the crab that holds, and we know in advance that he will triumph. We all know the two animated films Beauty and the Beast and Tarzan. They are two beautiful stories with little in common. However, some curious similarities have attracted the attention of some viewers and made them assume that there is a relationship between Belle and Jane. To support this theory, Disney enthusiasts have presented some fairly conclusive, albeit very curious, arguments. First, the two women have a certain physical resemblance, like to wear yellow clothes, and are in love with a wild being who has a good heart. But in the most striking similarity is Mr. Porter's tea set in Tarzan. Indeed, we can see an identical tea set in Beauty and the Beast. The teapot in this last film even has a name and a role. Her name is Madame Samovar, and she is a domestic housekeeper. It doesn't take much more for these meticulous viewers to seriously believe that Jane is Belle's descendant and that she has inherited her property. Toy Story 2, jointly produced by Disney and Pixar, is considered by many to be the best installment in the saga. This film is special in many ways. First of all, it was originally supposed to be developed by Disney. But the director of Pixar, on his part, had judged that the storyline was too bad and decided to redo everything by himself and his team. However, despite the time pressure, the project was completed and the deadline was met. Another thing that makes this film special is that it was almost lost forever due to a backup failure. It was only by chance that a copy was preserved. Another peculiarity of this film is that it contains a large number of allusions to Pixar and Disney films. There are also several references to unforgettable productions that have been enshrined in film culture, such as Star Wars, James Bond, or Jurassic Park. But it is especially the elements of the film A Bug's Life that we see most frequently at different places in the film. For example, in a scene from Toy Story 2, we can clearly see that Mrs. Potato Head is reading an illustrated book about a bug's life. When you first watched Lilo and Stitch, you may not have paid attention to this fleeting detail, which can be seen in Lilo's older sister Nani's room. As you may recall, the story of this film is about the friendship between Lilo, a 6-year-old orphan girl, and Stitch, an alien on the run and hunted by his fellow creatures. In one scene in Nani's room, a poster of Mulan, the Chinese warrior, is seen above the bed. Lilo and Stitch was released in theaters 4 years after the critically acclaimed animated film Mulan, which was elevated to the status of a masterpiece on par with The Lion King. The poster can be seen as a simple commemoration of the production's great success, and it can also be seen as a symbol of female courage, which also characterizes Mulan and Nani. There is another symbolic detail that decorates Nani's room. These are the trophies and medals that she won during her surfing days. Unfortunately, the death of her parents had to take her away from this sport where she's shown so much in the past. After this tragedy, she had to devote herself to the education of her little sister and sacrifice her passion and talent. This example of self-sacrifice illustrates well the affinity of characters that there can be between Mulan and Nani. Now let's talk about a movie that you've probably really enjoyed. Ratatouille. Released in 2017, this Pixar-produced animated film was a triumphant success from the moment it was released, and it has never wavered. In a scene in the second half of the film, there is an imperceptible detail which only careful observers have noticed. When the young cook Linguini and his lover Colette are roller skating, a figure can be seen in the background that at first goes unnoticed. But if you look closely, you will see that this character is familiar to those who remember the movie The Incredibles. This tall character with an elastic face makes mimics in front of a little boy. From the point of view of dress and appearance, he looks very similar to the character Bon Voyage. Although this character is not an important figure in the Pixar universe, we can believe that it is indeed him who appears in Ratatouille. Is this one of those illusions made on purpose to please the handful of passionate and attentive people who notice these minute details? Or is it that Pixar reuses pre-existing character models in its films by economy when they are very secondary and only appear furtively? There is another funny point to consider. It is not a hidden character, but a surprise resemblance. Do you see the boy standing in front of the mime? Don't you think he looks a lot like the young Anton Ego before he grew old and became the severe food critic? If the previous story has some doubts, this one, on the other hand, includes a deliberate and confirmed reference. We will tell you more. We are talking about the movie Up. Released in 2010, also co-produced by Disney and Pixar, this jovial and humorous film won over the critics and received prestigious awards. It is the story of Carl Fredricksen, an old man whose wife has just died, who transports his house to South America using helium balloons. During his long journey, Carl passes by the house of a little girl who looks in wonder through her window at the moving wall of multicolored balloons that obscures the entire landscape. In the children's room, against the bed, is a pink teddy bear which you probably know. It's Lotso, a central character in Toy Story 3, who authoritatively runs a toy daycare. But it's surprising to find this character in such an anecdotal scene, and in a movie that has little to do with Toy Story. It is in fact a kind of subliminal announcement made on purpose by Pixar. Indeed, Toy Story 3, which will feature the pink teddy bear, was supposed to be released in theaters 1 year after the movie Up. Another example that confirms that Pixar likes to scatter external characters in its films. Here is a very discreet hint, which can only be perceived if one examines the image with extreme attention. That's why we won't dwell on it. It is the film Ratatouille, which we mentioned earlier. In the scene that takes place in the pantry of the restaurant Gusteau, we can see next to Remy, who is crunching a piece of cheese, cans of caviar piled up. If we focus on the characters on the box, we can read above the inscription caviar the words Nemo brand. Of course, this is not apparent at first glance, and one has to enlarge and illuminate a whole part of the image. However, the allusion to the famous clownfish is real. It is even more real because it is on a box containing caviar. That is to say, fish eggs. Still in Ratatouille, another scene contains a reference to a character outside the film. When Remy is speeding through the recesses of a building, he suddenly sees the shadow of a barking dog on one floor. The threatening shadow frightened him and he fled. Doesn't that dog figure on the wall look familiar? If you've ever seen the movie Up that we mentioned a few minutes earlier, you'd guess the character we're talking about. It's Doug, the golden retriever, endearing and helpful, who takes a liking to the main characters of the movie Up and will keep them company. It is surprising to see his shadow worrying little Remy in Ratatouille. This time we are dealing with a macabre subject, which raises concerns and questions from Pixar fans. It is a serious and sinister theory, and one that we would like to believe is false. Do you remember one of Pixar's very first animated films, Monsters, Inc., released in 2001? In this story, various creatures inhabit a city powered by the cries of children. Among these creatures is the hero of the film, Sullivan. This likable character is one of Disney's most memorable figures. He has blue-green fur spotted with purple. In one scene in the film, the villain Randall wants to intimidate Sullivan and warns him that humans skin monsters and make toilet covers out of them. Sullivan, however, does not believe these absurd threats. And indeed, we will see nothing of the sort in the film, thankfully. On the other hand, 11 years later, when the movie Partysaurus Rex was released, we noticed something that suggests that Randall's scary words may have been true. Notice carefully the bathroom decorations as the tub is filled with foam. Don't you think the cover patterns on the right are suspicious? So the evil Randall was probably right. It's hard to imagine that this coincidence is gratuitous. Sullivan's fate must have been atrocious. In any case, Pixar has not commented on this troubling detail. What do you think? Was Sullivan's fur torn off? Riley Althaba Anderson is the central character in the 2015 animated film Inside Out. This 12-year-old girl has short blonde hair. She loves ice hockey, and she is very emotional. Riley is shy, sensitive, a bit gauche, and lonely, but optimistic and cheerful by nature. In short, Disney's young audience easily identifies with her. In the movie Turning Red, which was released in 2022 in theaters and on Disney Plus platform, attentive viewers noticed with surprise that Riley Anderson made a quick appearance. Admittedly, the appearance of this blonde girl is not whimsical or unique, but it must be said that the resemblance is striking. In the movie Turning Red, Maylene, a 13-year-old Canadian girl, has a magical power that she cannot control. Under the influence of too much emotion, she transforms into a red panda. This gift distresses her, and she wants to hide it. The scene of the film which interests us takes place in the school of Maylene. She is unfortunately turned into a red panda, and she is desperately looking for a place to hide. She runs with all her might through the school, and at the corner of a corridor, she accidentally knocks down a girl and a boy. Do you recognize the girl? It's probably Riley Anderson because she has the same features, height, and hair. This is the end of our video where you could see some sequences of animated movies where familiar characters are hiding. We hope you enjoyed them. Don't forget, as always, to tell us your opinion in the comments section. Did you like this video? Then don't forget to put a like, to subscribe to the channel, and to activate the bell so you won't miss anything from our next publications.